Ole Miss is the perfect fit for Leshon Williams in the transfer portal, and it's not really close.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today we're talking about how Ole Miss is already making moves in the transfer portal under Lane Kiffin for 2025, and they're eyeing a Big Ten standout. Leshon Williams, a running back from the Iowa Hawkeyes and an all Big Ten honorable mention a year ago, is emerging as a potential target. And with significant roster turnover expected in 2025, a seasoned one-and-done player like Williams would bring valuable veteran leadership to that team. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy provide more perspectives on the SEC and, yes, even Ole Miss. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we've reached the point of the season where people are starting to sit out and get into the transfer portal for the next year. And one of the players that did that was Leshon Williams. And he is a running back out of Iowa. He's a good back, a Big Ten honorable mention, all Big Ten type running back. He's a good player. He was a little bit injured this year. He decided to sit it out and hit college football free agency at the end of the year. And the point of this is he's a perfect pickup for Ole Miss because of the veteran leadership that he would have being a running back in that Kurt Ferentz system. Very disciplined, very level-headed coming into that room. And if he came to Ole Miss, there's a lot of young talent, really talented players, but young talent that he will be charged to be a leader of. Now, here's the thing from Pete Nakos. Iowa running back Leshon Williams is hearing from 15 schools since he entered the transfer portal. They include USC, Ole Miss, and Miami. Texas A&M is in there as well. Washington's in there as well. Some people that are going to expend. That tells you what a lot of people think of this running back. He's a really good player, and he would help because as it sits right now, if let's say the transfer portal does not hit Ole Miss again, like it hasn't really hit it before, save Key Lawrence this year. But Shakai Mills-Knight is a true freshman. Now, we like to think that he's going to come in and be the second coming of Quinshon Judkins, but you're not 100% sure of that. You have Logan Diggs, who's coming off of a torn ACL. We can't be entirely sure about that as well. Ole Miss needs to add to the running back room, and they need to add with a one-and-done type player, and Leshon Williams would fill that void. Man, if you look at the talent that is coming back on this offensive unit, there's a ton of talent. Now, Ole Miss isn't losing a lot of people, and everybody's going to focus on the number because the number is going to be astronomical in the 40s and the low 50s, and there are players that Ole Miss are going to have to replace. I'm not saying there's not. But the talent that's just slated to return to Ole Miss, it's pretty good. And if they come into full spring practice and all that and get ready to go, because in this coming spring, it's going to be important regardless. The starting quarterback is essentially already won, with Austin Simmons being the true backup quarterback this year. He's obviously the number one. He's the next in line. The question becomes whether Lane Kiffin brings in somebody to back him up, or does Walker Howard stay to back him up? But it looks like Austin Simmons is going to win this job. He's a young quarterback at wide receiver. I'm expecting Aiden Williams back. I'm expecting the real White. Caden Lee is already a dude, and there's some other players in that wide receiver room that is going to appear next year. I think Isaiah Hartrop, who's injured, but next year he could be back. So the wide receiver unit looks like it's going to work as well. We talked about the running back unit, the offensive line. They're going to get that figured out because they're going to have to use the transfer portal. But there's some young skill players is the point that has a chance to be pretty dynamic, honestly, if we're going to be real about this in 2025. Aiden Williams, everybody's talked about what Aiden Williams could be. Aiden Williams' biggest flaw over his first 2 years in college is backing up Trey Harris. With Trey Harris being in front of him, that is the biggest impediment to Aiden Williams to getting on the field. So we will see with these younger players and how they can do with what's going on. But Ole Miss needs veteran leadership. I think Ole Miss needs some one and dones. Ole Miss needs some players from really grounded programs like Iowa. There's a player from Indiana, a wide receiver, that has mentioned Ole Miss early on in the transfer portal cycle. Those type players are going to be big type players for Ole Miss to get because of the leadership they are going to apply to the younger players. That is something that you need to watch for. I think Leshon Williams is a good running back. He, like I said, he's an all Big Ten honorable mention player for 2023. He can run the ball hard. He's a physical back. He is what we hope Logan Diggs, that type of running back, will be. But he's a good player. He's physical. He can handle the load. And he's coming from a program culture in Iowa that he's going to be able to seamlessly blend a little bit into what's happening at Ole Miss, even if this is a players-led group. And he's going to help out Austin Simmons. He's going to help out those young wide receivers. He's going to help out Shakai Nils-Knight. So we'll see exactly how that looks. But the transfer portal king is hard at work. And if you look at the show that we did just yesterday about the whole Florida noise and all of that getting on, them actively recruiting hard in the transfer portal, that's nothing but a good sign for Ole Miss. People are going to talk about all the other stuff, and they're going to see a gator posted on Twitter without knowing what that gator was for and assign meaning to it. That's what they do on social media. And that becomes the narrative after a while. And then it turns out that Lane Kiffin's always looking for new jobs and stuff like that. Be careful. Take the signs for the good as well as the bad. It isn't just, confirmation bias on absolutely everything. If you think this is happening, this obviously means that. But this running back, Leshon Williams, he's a good back. And Ole Miss actively recruiting, trying to go towards what is going to be a younger offense next season. But they have a chance to be a very talented offense next season, and they're going to add to it in this offseason. They have a chance to be pretty good. Now, this is all with the asterisks that the transfer portal does not eat them up come December. Now, there are going to be some players get into the portal, but it's going to be interesting to see players like Nareel White and Aiden Williams and these younger players that aren't featuring much this year if they come around next year when they're supposed to be the guys. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Now, one problem that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss is going to have to deal with probably in this year's transfer portal is they play such a small number of players like Rashad Amos not seeing the field, players like that coming in that transferred to Ole Miss. They're not seeing the field at the moment. So Ole Miss is going to have to recruit against that a little bit. But if anybody can figure that out, it is Lane Kiffin. But Leshon Williams, good player, Iowa Hawkeyes, transfer portal. And obviously, as the season gets closer to the end, we're going to pay attention to signing day. We're going to pay attention to the transfer portal. I think we're going to have Zach Berry this weekend. Since it's an off weekend, we might have something on Saturday just to let that sit over the weekend to where he kind of resets recruiting and the transfer portal and all of the stuff that he's hearing. Nobody does a better job with recruiting than Zach. So we'll talk about him real quick as well. So thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Ole Miss has quietly become a defensive-led team. What's next for the Rebels as they rely on that defense to make a run? Stay tuned for the inside scoop. Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. There's not a bad seat in Baltimore Way Stadium. But Game Time has it to where you can see exactly what the view will be from that seat before you buy the ticket. They take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might even be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So let's talk about some, we're doing grades essentially, and the grades for the offense yesterday, they were not good. But the grades for the defense, they're going to be a little bit better. And honestly, they should be a little bit better because the defense has been pretty good this season, despite what anybody says. The midseason report card for the defense. Defense has absolutely become the strength of this football team, and that is absolutely fine as long as the offense and the coaching staff starts to realize that that is the case. Everybody can see it, but there's a situation to where an offensive coach wants the offense to be really good, and he wants to call a game a certain way because of that offense. The defense is the calling card of this football team, and Ole Miss needs to protect them at all cost. This is the best run defense since the Red Death defense at Ole Miss back in 1992-93. Jolie Dunn early period at Ole Miss. Absolutely the best run defense that they've had. They've given up 66 yards per game. I think they have 5 players with over 6 tackles for loss, and that could end up being 6 or 7 at the end of this football game. Ole Miss's defense is doing really well. They're way up there in tackles for loss and sacks. They had trouble getting to the quarterback against LSU, but I am absolutely convinced that the way this is going on, that the officials helped out LSU in that situation because of all the fake injuries. The Ole Miss was dealing with a little retribution in that game. Also, Suntarine Perkins is becoming the player that was expected of him. He's becoming an absolute monster on the edge, and that is nothing but a good thing for Ole Miss. But let's go back. This is a defensive-led team, and if Ole Miss was smart, they would start slowing it down a little bit if they can. They would start running clock when they can, do a whole lot more check with me's so the defense doesn't see that many plays. Against LSU, plays 1 through 65, they gave up 1 touchdown. Plays 65 through 80, they gave up 2 touchdowns. Protecting this defense and the players on the field, that's going to be important. Again, the first 59 minutes of that LSU game, Ole Miss gave up 1 touchdown to that offense. And Nussmeier competes his ass off. He just generally does. And that is impressive to me to see. He only completed 40% of his passes. He threw a couple of interceptions. Ole Miss was affecting him early, but he kept coming. He kept competing. And as the play can't get up and the fatigue set in, he got a little bit better and made plays at the end to get LSU the win in a game that honestly they had no business winning. There's so many plays that happened in that football game that they had no business winning that game. But looking at what can happen right now, Princely Amamiellan, who has missed essentially the last 2 games. He played a few snaps against LSU, but not many. He has 13 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. And like I said, that's not playing against South Carolina, and that was not playing against LSU. Princely healthy against LSU would have made a difference. I don't care what anybody says about that. Walter Nolan, 26 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, despite being double teamed each and every single play of the game. He's special. And then there's Chris Pupal, 48 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hurries, 2.5 sacks, just an absolute machine at linebacker. And he wasn't even starting the first 2 games of the season. We talk about the problems that Ole Miss had about their dealing with their depth chart and what went on in fall and all of that stuff, hoping that they would get ready for SEC play, and they weren't quite there. Chris Paul not starting at linebacker is probably another situation like that, but he has come on to be a really good player as well. I mean, it's important. I mean, it's how do you look at what's going on with Ole Miss and not call this as a very pro-defense, defensive first team? How? When you look at the red zone, they've given up touchdown or given up points, just points, people scoring 63% of the time. 63% of the time that people get inside Ole Miss's 25-yard line, they score points. Not touchdowns, points. They are 4 for 16, 25% touchdown rate for people that get inside the 25-yard line. This team is legit in the red zone. This is through 7 games at this point. 7 games they were able to do it. One of the touchdowns they gave up was on a ball they forced a fumble that just happened to go directly to a tight end that was falling in the end zone that cost Ole Miss the Kentucky game. That was a fluky, non-repeatable play, but it happened. It did happen. There's no way you can change it. It's going in the record book as Ole Miss getting beat 20-17 or something like that. But if you look at it, 25% of the time, opponents score in the red zone. 63% of the time, they score a field goal or a touchdown, 4 for 16, 25% of the time, a touchdown. Absolutely nuts. Now, they are third down conversions. They're only converting 26% of third downs against this Ole Miss defense. 29 times out of 113. Ridiculous. The time of the possession is lopsided. It genuinely is. And that is because the offense is having trouble staying on the field. The defense is on the field for an average of about 33 minutes per game. Now, that might seem like it's not a lot, but it is a lot. And a defense can wear down if they face a certain number of plays. It's absolutely nuts. They're giving up 2 yards per carry running the ball. 660 or 66.6 yards per game is all they're giving up. They've given up 1 rushing touchdown. That was on the fumble play against Kentucky. This defense is just elite against the run. Elite in the red zone. They make explosive plays. This is just a very good defense. They've given up 74 points through 7 games. They're giving up about 10 points a game, which I think puts them ahead of the 2014 defense pace that actually won the top scoring defense in the entire country that year. But Ole Miss has outscored their opponents 290-74, giving up 10.6 points per game. They've only given up 126 first downs at this point. That's averaging about 16 per game. This defense is legit. And it's the strength of this team. And it's a shame that they're not seeing this at this moment. There's a couple of plays that's happened that's gone against Ole Miss. Ole Miss lost the game. Not the defense's fault. Against Kentucky, the time of possession of that game was nearly 45 minutes for Kentucky. We talk about what Vandy did to Alabama. Kentucky did the same thing to Ole Miss the week before. This defense, even though they're put in inopportune positions, even though that this team is completely called for the offense to be successful, this defense has still become the strength of this team. They get off the field, they force punts. If the offense was doing anything similar to what they were doing a year ago, this is an Ole Miss team that would not have a loss, but they might be number 1 in the country right now because of how well this defense is playing. You got to find a way to execute offensively. The offense has to improve. You cannot hang this defense out to dry because that's what this is right now. They're hanging the defense out to dry. Now, I think the offense has a chance to fix itself, to be fine. They're playing against an Oklahoma team that is not particularly good offensively next week. Defensively, they're pretty good, but it's not a get-right game, but it's a challenge enough to where you can instill the confidence back in your game before going up to Fayetteville in that house of horrors at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. If you handle that, you have this strong defense that is going to travel, and you should be ready with the talent to win out. Now, I'm not saying they will. I think in the preseason, before the season started, when I was doing W's and L's, I marked that Georgia game down as an L. That's what I did. So the odds of them winning out are not great, especially after you look back at the last 2 out of 3 games. But that doesn't mean we're not going to root for it. That doesn't mean we're not going to live and die with every snap. That doesn't mean all of that stuff. Just means it's going to be difficult because there still is a mathematical chance for Ole Miss to make the playoff. If Ole Miss wins out with the win over Georgia, they're likely going to end up inside of that top 11, especially at number 18. At number 18, if they win the next 2 games, including Arkansas on the road, they're probably going to be back up to 13, which means that Georgia game becomes a de facto playoff play-in game. I mean, if we want to be real about it, that is Ole Miss's path. And it's not a narrow path. It's a real path. But the defense and understanding exactly what you are is going to be important to protect them, to get ready, because that defensive unit can win games for you as long as you don't screw it up offensively. And that means not going for it on 4th and 1, taking the points. If the other team's only scoring a little bit of points, you only need a little bit more to win. Take the points when they're offered. Do not try and score a touchdown every time. Know the game states, the game situations, and play to that defense. Definitely do not go for it on the minus side of the field. If you do all that, you're probably going to win if you don't turn over and commit the penalties. If you just play clean and play safe and traditional Nick Saban football, you're going to win every game on the schedule because of how good this defense is playing. So we'll see exactly how that goes. So thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Suntarine Perkins is turning into that star that we've all been waiting for. He's making plays and dominating the field. Is this just the beginning? Stay tuned as we dive into his breakout performances. Hello, NFL fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Ole Miss is a pick'em this week for the bye week. No, I'm just kidding. Of course. But tune in next week to find out how the Rebels stack up against the Oklahoma Sooners. Ole Miss should be a favorite in that game, honestly. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. So it's really interesting. This run defense is special at this point. And when you look at what they're doing, I think they're giving up 66 yards a game through 7 games. They are increasingly difficult to run the football on at the moment. I think they might be the best defense in the entire SEC at this point. But they need help. They do. And it's weird to think that an offense under Lane Kiffin would not be providing the help that the defense needs to be successful. Because the way this is set up right now is the defense is playing really well, but every decision is being made with the offense in mind. And we're not really caring if we put the defense in a bad situation. Now, they're not going for it as much as they have been. Frazier Messine has absolutely been killing the ball, and props to that young man. But I think there's still a little bit more we can do as a program. But Ole Miss, this is probably the best run defense that Ole Miss has had since the Red Death defense with Tim Bowens and Norman Hand and those guys in the early 90s. This defense with Walter Nolan and Princely Mamuelin and Suntarine Perkins and Jared Ivey and J.J. Pegues and Zxavion Harris and Akello Stone and Kam Franklin and all those guys, props to them. They are playing out of their skin. And when you add TJ Daugherty and Chris Paul and Kari Coleman and those guys playing on the second level, this team gets really good really fast, especially defensively. It's honestly a pleasure to watch them play defense right now. And that LSU team is a good team. They're going to get going at some point against every team they play. And it was work for them to try and find anything against that Ole Miss defense. They were able to do it at the end. They completed the pass at the end, and they were able to get the one in the end zone in overtime. But the first part of that game was amazing. And I was sitting there looking at the stats, and Jaden Kennedy has 9 pass breakups this season, tied with Trey Amos for the team lead. Everybody likes to talk about Jaden Kennedy and what's going on, but I think a lot of that has to do with a misevaluation of Isaiah Hamilton and Brandon Turnage and needing somebody to end up on the other side. I think that turned out to be a little bit more of a weakness than they even knew going into this season. Again, this might be a problem of the kinder, gentler fall camp and not as much field work. Is some of those decisions were incorrect from the beginning, and there's personnel that's being shifted all around because Ole Miss just isn't quite sure who their best players are at each position. But we'll see exactly how that goes. Now, we're going to close this show on a good note. Suntarine Perkins is becoming the guy that he was recruited to be. He's becoming an absolute monster on the football field. He is becoming an end version of Tony Connor, more of a box safety version of Tony Connor. He's got 30 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He's right up towards the lead in every single one of those categories. Not necessarily tackles, because that's Daugherty and Paul leading that. But as the season goes on, and especially if Princely and Monmielen can't quite get right, Perkins is going to have a larger and larger role on this team. And just like we talked about in the transfer portal with the offense in the first segment, there's some young high school players. Ole Miss has done a relatively decent job of high school recruiting as well as the transfer portal. Ole Miss gets the reputation of being a transfer portal school. But when you look on the field, there were several times I saw Zxavion Harris and Jam Brown playing on the field with Suntarine Perkins. You have a Kam Franklin. You have a lot of younger players that have a chance to be really good. William Eccles is a potential all-freshman level player. The defensive line's in really good shape. Now, the linebacker position, Kari Coleman and Chris Paul and TJ Daugherty, that's going to take a little bit off of the freshmen, contributing to what's going on. But Ole Miss has commitments from linebackers as well as going on. Trey Washington has been recruited. There's some young defensive backs that have been recruited in. Ole Miss has done fairly well at the high school position. They need to bring them up and continue to develop them. I think spring practice is going to be absolutely massive for the 2025 season because the young players that it's time to get ready. It's time to go. And when that happens, you can see a unit start to be formed. Again, I do not think that next year's team is going to look like this year's team. Okay? I think next year's team still has a chance to be pretty good. I don't think next year's team going into the season, nobody is going to say that they're going to win 11 ball games, but they have a chance to win 7 or 8 games. Definitely. But they're just going to be so young. And that's something we have to pay attention to as well. I hope this has been, informative to everybody. It's a bye week, so we wanted to look at the 2025 season and the transfer portal with the Leshon Williams news. So we talked about that a little bit. We're going to get into it a little bit more. We have Zach Berry this weekend, I believe, that he's going to kind of reset recruiting, and we're going to have Tim Thomas tonight, I do believe, talking basketball as we start to transition just a little bit. I think Ole Miss plays Houston in a closed-door scrimmage this weekend. We'll see exactly what can be expected from that as well. But thank you so much for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Now go check out Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link for Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, exciting news, you can become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider. It's the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. It's our texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of a message board filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. For those watching on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.